Okay, Doc. First, thanks for all the wonderful information. I have a couple of questions. You mentioned in an earlier Q&A video that you use Arimidex for your AI. You talked about Femera being used for tough cases, and you also said Aromacin may also be used. I tried Arimidex and found it that it caused me an upset stomach. Please detail if Aromacin would be a good choice and a comparable dosage on a milligram by milligram basis to Arimidex. And question number two, how do you structure your weekly protocol in regard to the timing of the HCG administration, AI usage, and testosterone injection? I wish to maximize my HRT and minimize estradiol side effect. Many thanks. Garrett.
Two-part question there, right?
Yeah.
Pretty much?
Yeah.
So, Femara or letrozole is a stronger aromatase inhibitor than anastrozole. It was actually the first one they invented in their R&D. I forget the company that made them, but because there was a mild, and it was a mild liver enzyme elevation, they went to anastrozole instead of letrozole. But remember, all these were invented originally to treat women with breast cancer, so that we could, bury the estrogen-sensitive breast cancer. Again, though, and probably with the right intent, certainly with the right intent, because of the liver enzyme elevation, we got something a little weaker, and it worked out well because, in guys when I don't really see any reason for using letrozole in hormone replacement therapy. The only time I've ever seen it used where it was needed, if you will, is where guys were just aromatizing left and right, and they were using so much of an aromatizable, for example, testosterone, that that was the only thing that worked to keep the E2 within, total estrogens within a normal or optimal range. Side effects I've seen with letrozole, not just because you're burying the estrogen, but because I think that in my experience there are some things that come along with letrozole itself. Typically it's just libido issues, erectile dysfunction issues. It just buries you sexually, so it's just not worth going there unless, again, you got some odd reason to use it. The alternatives, yeah, you can use Aromacin, and generally speaking, in my experience, a milligram of anastrozole will equate to 25 milligrams of Aromacin, or exemestane, as the prior person used the term. How often to use it, that all depends. I mean, how much control do you need? There is a different MOA with exemestane than with anastrozole, but again, in effect, it's remarkably similar. I mean, it might be different by 3% depending upon the study you read in effectiveness. So those are pretty interchangeable, yeah. What's the protocol when mentioning testosterone, HCG, and AI?
Yeah, the timing.
Again, it all depends.
Yeah.
What I try to do with patients, and again, it depends on each individual, how quickly you're metabolizing the testosterone. Okay, you've got, on average, and this varies widely as I've seen in my practice, but on average, and I say that because it doesn't come close sometimes, but you're going to see a peak in testosterone on about day 2.5 after you inject, okay, if you're doing weekly injections. Let's say day 2.5, and then it's going to tail down there for the remainder until your next injection 7 days later. Anastrozole has a much shorter half-life. I'm using cypionate, for example, with my testosterone, which has an 8-day half-life, right? Anastrozole has a 48-hour, 2-day half-life. So you're going to have to punctuate that more frequently into your week. And some people, if they metabolize the testosterone in a more narrow titer, you can use just an every other day anastrozole dosing to keep that titer narrow, and of course ultimately keep your estrogen, particularly the estradiol, which is what we use as a surrogate marker for estrogens, in a nice narrow range. I like to keep between 15 to 20 picograms per milliliter. I know I'm giving you way too much information, but the idea is to keep them within range. If you have someone who really bounces up very high with their testosterone as soon as they inject, so that say day 2 is, and this is, I've seen it, 3,200, even more nanograms per deciliter, more than likely they've climbed out of the body's comfort zone in that, the high side of the titer, and so the body's gonna make a lot more estrogen than typical of most other patients. So that instead of going every other day and maintaining a nice narrow titer with the Arimidex, we're going to have to front load, if you will, in the week to cover that big bump in testosterone with Arimidex. Okay, so we can still keep it in range. So I'm explaining why I can't just give a pat answer. Oh, well, you do your HCG on this day and you do your testosterone on this day.
That makes sense though.
Typically, though, I don't prescribe the first dose of Arimidex in either of those two cases until the day after your injection. Sometimes we get a little more precise, and we might say, okay, if you do your testosterone injection and you start metabolizing into estrogen very quickly, do your testosterone in the morning, take your Arimidex at night. Or not till the following morning, because it typically doesn't climb that fast. And again, we do need estrogen, so we don't want to bury the estrogen at the beginning or the end. We want to keep it at that 15 to 20 picograms per milliliter. So that I can say in general, let your body start to convert a little bit. But again, I'm really generalizing because everyone's different, and if we have a dose from the front side of that testosterone injection carrying over, because we're doing it every other day, that throws that off a little bit too, because you already have a measure coming into your next injection. So HCG, ditto, same idea. You're not getting, for the most part, unless you're dealing with what to me has become a more rare form of replacement therapy, in that hybrid of, you're borderline, you're young, you're still producing some endogenous, and we can get something out of your testicles versus, the 50-year-old. Some people will, in other words, use HCG for their testosterone, and that makes it more complicated. Most people that I'm dealing with, say a 55-year-old male, you can stimulate the testicles all day long, and they're saying, we've been done for years, pal. You're not getting anything testosterone-wise out of the HCG. What you're getting is typically an attempt at maintaining some function to maintain fertility, or some function to maintain testicular size. It's cosmetic. Cosmetic or fertility reasons. The only reason why you're using HCG. So it doesn't really matter when you're dosing. You're just sending a signal that is not otherwise being sent by the pituitary in the form of luteinizing hormone through this analog of LH, HCG, to, hey, don't go to sleep on me yet, testicles.
It's not going to work
just
any
keep
better or
functioning
any
with
less.
it.
Yeah, gotcha.
So it really doesn't matter as long as you're getting regular, and everyone's a little different there too. Some people, hey, as long as I nudge them once a week, and age is a factor, genetics is a factor, chronicity of use of testosterone is a factor. So you got to kind of see what works best for you.
Nice. Good answer. Thanks, Doc.